You ever buy a house thinking you've finally earned a quiet life, only to discover you just signed up for a battlefield? I did. My name's Rachel Briggs. 25 years in the Marine Corps. 3 tours in Iraq. 1 in Afghanistan. And a chest full of medals that mean more to me than any HOA rulebook ever will. When I bought my house in Silver Pines, I wasn't looking for conflict, I was looking for peace. A garage to rebuild my vintage Harleys. A porch to sip my coffee. Maybe even grow tomatoes. What I wasn't expecting. Karen Whitmore. Now, Karen wasn't your average nosy neighbor. No. This woman strutted around like she was some kind of suburban dictator. Armed with clipboards, bylaws, and a security team in golf carts with HOA enforcement magnets slapped on the side like some kind of bootleg SWAT unit. At first, it was just whispers. New president, they said, wants to clean things up. By the end of her first week, she'd mailed out a 32-page rulebook, no joke, detailing acceptable curtain colors, holiday decoration timelines, and a literal diagram on how tall your mailbox post could be. I didn't blink. I'd faced worse. Then came the first letter. Folded crisp, with Karen's signature in blue ink and a frowny face stamp like I was some misbehaving toddler. You are in violation of Article 12, improper display of national symbols. My offense? An American flag. One that had flown above my unit's barracks in Fallujah. I called the HOA office. Of course. I got voicemail. So I showed up in person. Karen was in the clubhouse sipping sparkling water like it was Dom Perignon. I laid the letter down on her desk. Care to explain this? Karen didn't even glance up. We've had complaints. The flag is weathered. It clashes with the community's aesthetic guidelines. It's not a decoration. I replied. That flag's got more battle scars than most people have wrinkles. Karen raised an eyebrow like I'd just farted in church. We want Silver Pines to maintain a unified look. This isn't a military base. Ms. Briggs. I leaned in. No, ma'am. But I earned the right to fly that flag. And unless you're planning to rewrite the Constitution, it's staying right where it is. That smile. That awful Karen smile. All teeth. No soul. Well, we'll see about that. I should have walked away then. But I couldn't. Because this wasn't just about me. It was about principle. The letters escalated. $75 fine. Then $150. Then $300 for refusal to comply with HOA directives. 1 week later, I got cited for oil stains in my driveway, where I'd been tuning my Harley. Another violation for leaving my garbage bins out an hour past the pickup window. And the cherry on top, a $250 fine for visual clutter. Apparently, my retired military license plate qualified. I was being targeted. But here's the thing about picking a fight with a Marine, you better finish what you start. One night, I was in the garage working on my bike, sweating through my tank top. Grease on my hands, when my buddy Mike stopped by. He served with me back in Mosul. These days, he's a lawyer by day, and president of our motorcycle club, the Iron Valor. He took one look at the latest letter pinned to my door, final notice, pending legal action, and whistled low. She's really pushing it, he said. You think she knows who she's messing with? Nope, I said, tossing him a wrench. But she's about to find out. That night, we drafted a plan. Cameras installed. Records copied. Letters scanned. Every petty violation. Every fine. Every moment she crossed the line, I logged it all. And just when I thought things couldn't get worse, they broke down my door. That's where we'll pick up next time. It was a Sunday. Quiet. Almost too quiet. I was in my garage, wiping down the chrome on my Harley Davidson, when I heard a thud. Not a knock. Not a polite neighborly tap. A thud, deep, demanding, and wrong. I barely had time to reach the living room when the door frame cracked like a dry branch. 2 men in tactical vests with HOA enforcement stitched across their chests came barreling in like they were raiding a drug den. Leading the charge, Trevor Gantz, Karen's personal attack dog. Word around the neighborhood was he used to work mall security until he got fired for chasing a teenager through a food court with a stun gun. And there he was, standing in my foyer, trying to look like a war hero with a badge that wasn't real and a power trip that was all too real. Behind him, of course, was Karen Whitmore, pressed slacks, sunglasses indoors, and that clipboard she always carried like it was the Magna Carta. I planted my boots and growled, "You've got exactly 3 seconds to get out of my house before this becomes something you regret." Karen didn't flinch. She waved a piece of paper like it was Holy Writ. "Emergency interior inspection," she said coolly. "Section 24B. Ms. Briggs, you've refused multiple directives, and we've received reports of hazardous materials and structural violations." I snatched the paper and barely had to glance at it. "This only covers exterior inspections, and only with 48-hour notice. You just broke into my home illegally." Trevor placed his hand on his taser. Karen smirked. "Failure to comply can result in additional sanctions," she said, stepping toward my garage. "You're not going anywhere near my..." But it was too late. They pushed past me like they owned the place. Trevor scanned the workbench like he was looking for contraband. Karen was already snapping photos of my tools, my bike. And then she saw the flag. My flag. It hung above the workbench. Edges frayed from wind and smoke. Colors dulled by sandstorms. It had survived 2 deployments in the Middle East. Non-regulation display. Karen sniffed, typing something into her HOA-issued iPad. "That's another $750 fine." Trevor reached for it. I moved faster than I had in years, closing the distance, grabbing his wrist mid-motion. "You put that flag down now," I said through clenched teeth. He yanked it from the wall and tossed it carelessly onto my bench. "It's not about sentiment," he barked. "It's about compliance." Everything in me was screaming to react, but I didn't. Not yet. I let them walk through my home, defiling every inch with citations. Karen knocked over a photo of my old unit, shattering the glass across my floor. "You'll be billed for cleanup," she said casually, as if stepping on memories was just part of her routine. When they were done, Karen handed me a document with $4,500 in accumulated fines and inspection fees. "You have 72 hours to remit payment," she said, not even looking at me, "or we initiate lien proceedings." Then Trevor, smug as a fox in a henhouse, tossed in one last jab. "Rules are rules. Tough guy." The second they left, I locked eyes with my reflection in the broken frame. No more. I picked up my phone and called Mike, Iron Valor Club president, former JAG attorney, and a man you call when the law needs teeth. They broke in, I told him, tore down the flag, threatened a lien. There was a long silence. "I'm calling the brothers," Mike said. "Be ready." Within an hour, 5 bikes rumbled into my driveway. Iron Valor wasn't your average motorcycle club. We were veterans, bonded by battle and built for justice. Rodriguez, our logistics guy and former military police, walked up to the shattered door frame and nodded. "That's a clean breach," he muttered. "They forced it. Didn't even try to hide it." Dawson, a retired SWAT team captain, checked my security cams. "You've got everything on video. Entry. Intimidation. The flag." Mike, meanwhile, scanned the inspection notice. "This is garbage," he said, flipping through the pages. "Section 24B doesn't authorize entry, just exterior checks. And only with advanced notice. This is textbook breaking and entering, criminal trespass, and a handful of civil rights violations." I looked at them, my hands still trembling, not with fear, but fury. "They think this is just about me," I said. "It's not," Wilson replied, our oldest member. Vietnam vet. Voice steady. "If they're doing this to you, a Marine with a security setup and legal contacts, imagine what they're doing to the elderly, the single moms, the quiet ones." I nodded slowly. "This just became a war." Next part. We go on the offensive. You don't need a badge to commit robbery. You just need bylaws, a printer, and enough scared homeowners. By Monday morning, the Iron Valor crew had turned my dining room into a makeshift command center. Rodriguez brought 2 whiteboards. Dawson had his laptop open, pulling up satellite images of the neighborhood. Mike was poring over the HOA handbook like it was a hostile legal territory, because it was. "Look at this," Mike said, tapping a spreadsheet he'd built from the citations we'd collected so far. Over $87,000 in fines in the last 8 months alone. "Is that even legal?" I asked. "It's legal if the money is reinvested into the community," Mike replied. "But here's the thing, we're only seeing about $9,000 of it going to actual improvements. Lawn care, pool maintenance, basic repairs. That's it." Rodriguez frowned. "So where the hell is the rest going?" Mike grinned. But it wasn't a happy grin. "Consulting fees." He pulled up a PDF of the latest quarterly report. The spending breakdown looked normal at first glance, until you started reading the vendors. Donnelly Tactical Solutions, MDG Community Partners, Vision Assessment Group LLC. Each of them had received thousands in HOA funds over the past 6 months. Each of them was registered to the same address. And each of them had the same legal agent, Greg Whitmore, Karen's brother-in-law. "A shell game," Rodriguez muttered. "Classic. Set up fake companies. Funnel the money through them. Make it look like legitimate consulting." "She's laundering HOA funds," Mike said. "And it's not just for profit. She's building something." He clicked open a browser tab. There it was. Karen Whitmore, candidate for City Council, 6th District. With a banner that read, "A proven leader in community development." I stared at the screen. Heart thudding. "She's using the HOA as a political launchpad." Mike nodded. "And our neighborhood is her ATM." But it got worse. Wilson returned that afternoon with a stack of printouts and a face like stone. "You're going to want to sit down," he said. He dropped 3 property reports on the table. 3 houses in Silver Pines that had gone into foreclosure in the last year. All under suspicious circumstances. One was owned by a retired teacher who'd missed a fine payment for an unapproved rose trellis. One belonged to a widowed nurse who had a cracked window blind and unpaid garden lighting fees. One had been owned by a single father of 2 cited for nuisance-level exterior paint color. All 3 homes had been sold at public auction for less than half their market value. All 3 were now owned by a company named Civic Pathway Holdings. And guess who signed the deed transfers? Greg Whitmore. Rodriguez slammed his palm against the table. "They're not just taking money. They're taking homes." "It's a predatory cycle," Dawson added, pulling up a flow chart he'd made. "They start with small violations, grass too long, trash cans out of line. Then the fines start compounding. Once the homeowner misses one, they hit 'em with bigger ones. Accusations of non-compliance, threats of liens. And if they can't pay, foreclosure." "And when they do," Wilson said, "Karen's shell companies scoop the properties up for pennies." "She's building a portfolio," Mike muttered. "A political resume. A real estate empire. And a community too afraid to fight back." That's when I said it, out loud. For the first time, she's weaponized the HOA. No one responded. They didn't have to. The worst part? It was working. The neighbors were terrified. People were selling, packing, disappearing overnight. Karen wasn't just a bad HOA president. She was running a legal racket dressed up in suburbia. "We need evidence," Mike said finally. "Not just hearsay. Paper trails, testimonies, bank records. We build a case airtight enough that not even her council campaign can bury it." Rodriguez and Dawson started assembling reports, mapping a pattern across the entire subdivision. I installed more cameras and began reaching out to other residents, carefully, discreetly. Most were hesitant. Some were angry. A few broke down crying. But they talked. And what they told us next made everything clearer. and more dangerous. Karen wasn't done yet. She had plans. She wanted to expand the HOA's jurisdiction. There was talk of rezoning, of pushing into nearby streets. A flyer had quietly circulated with the phrase, "From community to district." She wasn't running a neighborhood. She was building an empire. And we were going to burn it down, one page of evidence at a time. If you ever want to see the look on a tyrant's face when they realize their empire is crumbling, show up with 27 combat veterans and an HDMI cable. It was the quarterly HOA meeting at the Silver Pines Clubhouse. And this time, we didn't come alone. By 9:30 a.m., the rumble of motorcycles echoed through the streets like distant thunder. One by one, members of Iron Valor pulled into the lot, flags flying, chrome glinting in the sun. Behind them came the people, families, retirees, single moms, and neighbors who'd had enough. Victims of intimidation, witnesses to extortion, survivors of a system weaponized against them. Inside, Karen Whitmore stood at the front of the meeting room, clipboard in hand, wearing her HOA badge like it was the Oval Office seal. Her security team, those same guys who'd kicked in my door, flanked the walls, all puffed up in their matching vests. But as the seats filled beyond capacity, and the veterans took their places in the back like a silent wall of justice, something changed in her eyes. Doubt. Mike stepped forward, dressed sharp in a suit that still somehow didn't hide the steel underneath. "This meeting," Karen began, her voice pitched higher than usual, "is for Silver Pines residents only. If you're not on the homeowner registry, I'll have to ask you to leave." Mike didn't even blink. Each of these individuals is present as a registered guest under Article 3. Section 2 of the HOA bylaws, which you've conveniently ignored while rewriting the rules to suit yourself. Karen opened her mouth, but nothing came out. A paper trembled slightly in her hands. I stood next, calm, centered, focused like a Marine on target. "My name is Rachel Briggs," I said, projecting so even the people standing in the hall could hear me. "Many of you know me as the lady with the bikes. What you might not know is that 3 weeks ago, Karen Whitmore and her self-appointed security team broke into my home. They tore down my flag. They sued over $4,000 in fake fines. And they did it under the guise of authority they do not legally have." A hush fell. Then I pressed play. The projector flickered to life, and the room watched in stunned silence as the footage rolled. Karen and Trevor bursting through my door. Karen typing fines on her iPad like she was playing Candy Crush. Trevor yanking down my flag and tossing it like trash. Gasps. Whispers. The first cracks in the wall. Then the voices started. An elderly woman, Mrs. Ellen Grant, 83 years old, stood up, leaning on her cane. "My husband, Harold, fought in Vietnam," she said softly. "After he passed, I planted a garden in his memory. Roses he helped me grow for 40 years. Her voice cracked. Karen said it violated the landscaping code. While I was at a doctor's appointment, they tore it all up. Someone in the back muttered, "That's evil." A second voice. Sarah Lopez, ER nurse, single mom. "My 12-year-old daughter was home alone while I worked a night shift. 2 of Karen's enforcers came to inspect our garage. My daughter hid in the bathroom and called me sobbing. By the time I got home, they were gone, but they left $1,200 in fines for unauthorized lighting and storage violations. I still haven't slept right." A third voice. Ramon Alvarez, food truck owner. "My son put up an Eagle Scout project with American flags on our fence. Karen fined us $6,700 and said if we didn't pay, she'd call the health department on my business. That truck feeds my family." Each voice brought the room further to a boil. Fear gave way to fury. Victims who had once suffered in silence now realized they weren't alone. Mike stepped forward with a flash drive. "These," he said, "are HOA financial records filed with the county. In the last 8 months, Karen Whitmore's board collected $87,000 in fines, and spent less than $9,000 on community maintenance. He clicked through the slides. Vendor payouts to shell companies. Corporate filings showing Greg Whitmore, Karen's brother-in-law, as the registered agent. Deeds of foreclosed homes sold to companies tied to the same address. 3 properties, Mike said, were foreclosed under Karen's leadership and purchased by her own family's corporations. This isn't oversight. This is systematic fraud. Karen tried to cut him off. That's enough. No, I said, stepping forward again. This is enough. We projected a final image. Karen's city council campaign site. Her face smiling, promising honest leadership. Laughter broke out. A neighbor called out, "You call this honest?" Another shouted, "You stole my backyard." Karen. The room erupted into chaos, not with violence, but with clarity. The fog had lifted. People weren't afraid anymore. A motion was made right then and there, to suspend Karen Whitmore and dissolve the security team pending investigation. The vote? Unanimous. She stood frozen at the front, lips parted but silent, as her little empire crumbled beneath her orthopedic heels. But it wasn't over yet, because next, we were calling the authorities. If you've ever watched a kingdom collapse in real time, you know it doesn't always happen with sirens and fireworks. Sometimes, it's the sound of a chair scraping the floor as a disgraced tyrant walks out, alone, without applause, without power. 3 days after the meeting that changed everything, Karen Whitmore submitted her resignation. The official email was cold and clinical, citing health reasons and personal stress. But everyone in Silver Pines knew the truth. She'd been exposed. The fallout was swift. The HOA board, most of them silent enablers, scrambled to distance themselves. But it was too late. The homeowners had voted to dissolve the enforcement unit, freeze all fine collections, and initiate a full forensic audit of the HOA's financial activity. Trevor Gantz, the head of Karen's rogue security team, didn't get a chance to slink away. 2 county deputies arrested him right on his front lawn. Turns out he'd been dodging a warrant in Nevada for impersonating a police officer and carrying a stun weapon without a license. As they walked him to the cruiser, one of the deputies turned to me and said, "You'd be surprised how many people think an HOA badge makes them God." "No," I said, watching Trevor stare at the ground. "I'm not surprised at all." Mike, ever the strategist, filed a class action motion with statements from 19 families. The district attorney's office opened an investigation into financial misconduct and real estate fraud. Karen's brother-in-law, Greg Whitmore, went dark. His shell companies were suddenly under review by the state licensing board. But what mattered most wasn't the charges or the paperwork. It was the community. Within a week, a new HOA board was elected, this time by the residents. For the residents. No security force. No nonsense. Just neighbors who actually wanted to make the place better. Mrs. Grant's memorial garden? Replanted by volunteers. Roses. Marigolds. And a new bronze plaque bearing her husband's name, Harold Grant. Vietnam veteran. She cried when she saw it. We all did. Sarah Lopez had her fines dismissed and was given a formal apology by the new board. Her daughter smiled for the first time in weeks when I handed her a tiny solar porch light in the shape of a butterfly. The Alvarez family's Eagle Scout flag project. It's now an official fixture at the community playground, with a small plaque that reads, "A tribute to service, heritage, and the right to stand tall." And my flag, the one Trevor tore down, that Karen called non-regulation, it flies proudly above my garage, illuminated at night by twin spotlights and secured with a plaque, Fallujah's 2nd Battalion, we don't fold. But it doesn't end there. Other houses started putting up flags too. First one, then 2. Then by the end of the month, nearly every house on the street had a flagpole, not just in support of me, but as a symbol that this neighborhood had changed. We weren't afraid anymore. We weren't divided. We were done being ruled by fear. As I stood on my porch one morning, coffee in hand. A little girl rode by on a pink bike and waved. Her streamers fluttered. And her helmet had stickers of stars and stripes. Her dad walked behind her, pushing a stroller, nodding to me with quiet gratitude. And in that moment, I realized, we didn't just win a fight against Karen, we rebuilt a community. That's the thing about people like her. They think they can intimidate, fine, and scare their way into power. But what they always underestimate is what happens when good people get fed up. When neighbors become allies, when veterans pick up a new mission, when flags, torn down in arrogance, rise higher than ever, not in defiance, but in unity. Karen's house was listed for sale last week. The sign just says, motivated seller. Quiet neighborhood. Community-oriented. I guess she finally figured out what community really means. And around here, it doesn't mean fear. It means freedom.